Matt from Natural Chemistry. You and I have been doing this for about 8 years. It's not getting any better, but we're not getting any better, I should say, right? So, I guess I'm first up here. I get the first portion of this. So one of the things, that we're trying to do here is help you understand the flow of your pool, the hydraulics, the chemicals, just the basic everything. We're gonna go through everything. If you got any questions, it's definitely a smaller class, so feel free to. Feel free to ask any questions as we go along. Okay. So, and I'm drawing a blank at your last name.
Hughes.
Hughes, thank you. Okay. So I see faces when I just can't. I can put it together with a pool. So we've got some folks in the back with above ground pool, and we got rest fiberglass, so we're pretty good on that. So the hydraulics are going to be the same. The blue is the intake, the cold water, if you would, from the floor in the skimmer, comes in and goes through the pool equipment, pump, filter, heater, and then the red is the return line back to the pool. Important thing here is you need circulation, and Matt's going to talk about what it takes to keep a pool clean. But we want to have the water circulated, and we want to keep the flow going. So here's just the pool equipment itself. Again, and I should probably note that in this example here, they have the skimmer connected to the floor drain. We run individual lines instead of a single line up into the pool. From the pump to the filter, we got the UV drawn in there. I didn't see that last night. The heater and a chlorine generator or a tablet feeder, some source of chlorine, and then a return line back to the pool. So, talking about circulation, the most important thing on this is that when you do run your water, you want to have your return fittings aimed down. You don't want to blow it up on the surface. You don't want to have some wrinkles in the water. You want it aiming down. You want to circulate the pool. We usually put 2 returns in such that one shoots it across and one in lengthwise, and we want to get the rotation going and bring the water back to the skimmer. So this is a blow-up of just the pump itself. The homemade arrow on the front is the intake where the water comes in, and that'll come into your pump basket. Anything in the front of the pump is suction, so if you have a loose fitting, a cap that we put antifreeze in, or a valve, you'll see air in the pump, and that's where you'll know that the pump isn't drawing enough water into it itself. Anything from the impeller back will be under pressure. If there's a crack or a broken pipe, the water will be leaking out of it because that's the pressure side. The front side is suction. And what's so important about that is if you don't have the lid on tight, you don't have the pipe tight or a valve or a cap tight, you won't get the prime in the spring of the year, or if you open it up and change your basket, clean your leaves, you won't get suction again. So obviously dirt, you don't want dirt in your pool. We're going to talk about filtration. That's the easiest thing to do is clean out the dirt, clean out the leaf, clean out the algae. 3 different types of filters are common in the pool industry. DE is very popular down south. It cleans very clear and very clean, but it's a little bit of a pain to work with. Cartridge and sand filters. So there's a DE filter. Basically, it's similar to a coffee filter, paper and white diatomaceous earth on it, and that's how you filter your water. Do you know what kind of filter you guys have?
It's cartridge.
Okay, good. That'll be easy. So cartridge is what we recommend. We started doing cartridge filters when we had white fiberglass pools. We had we had iron stains, and we found out that the cartridge filters would filter out more of the iron because it's finer than sand. So the cartridges will filter down to 24 microns. The sand filter will only get about 50, and it doesn't clean the water quite as clearly. The lower left picture, you'll see all the sediment on the patio. That's my house. That's in the 4th of July weekend, and all that sediment came out of one filter. Here you can see a couple of them that we bring back in October. We wash them, we pressure wash them, we soak them in muriatic acid, we clean them. You'll get 2 or 3 seasons out of them. By the 3rd season, they're pretty well shot. You'll use them as an opening and get the junk out of your pool, and maybe that'd be a time to throw them out. You'll see in the top here, we had a pool, that we opened in June, and all the green algae got caught in there. Don't wait until June to open your pool. You open your pool the month of April. When I take phone calls, I don't even wanna schedule a pool for May, because you don't know what's going on under the cover. Could be hot, could be sunny. Let's open that pool in April, so we can see what your water chemistry's like. If you have any problems or any issues, let's get to it right away. And cartridge. So, again, the water will flow in, go through the paper pleats in here. There'll be 320 square feet of filters, media, and the water will flow through here. And you'll take these out and hose them out, and you'll get 2 or 3 seasons out of them. Sand, most basic type of filtration. The water comes in, it goes through the media, and then back out the fittings in the bottom. And when it's dirty, you just put it in back flush, which is basically reversed. Blow the water through the sand backwards and out on the hose under your grass. I'm not a fan of sand filters, as it doesn't filter as finely as a cartridge, didn't get out as much either, but it's a very common filter. You can put glass media in instead of sand, which will give you better filtration, a finer filtration, and if you use the Activate, you don't have to change out the media, and it'll last much longer. So heaters, most all of you here, we will install heat pumps. They're most efficient. They're easy to run, you don't need a gas line, they just fire up and run. I do want to bring your attention that they are going to sweat and drip, and there'll be moisture running out of them. So if you see it going drip, 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 it's not leaking, it's the condensation. Just like if you park your car outside and you got your air conditioner on, and there's a puddle of water underneath it, so don't call us and tell us it's leaking, unless it's really leaking. Okay. Sanitizers. So, let's start with the basics here. Suppose I can take that out of the bag here. You got the floater, so this could be one way to add chlorine to your above ground pool or to the basic pools. This is very simple. You put your chlorine tablet in here and adjust it an opening for how much erosion you want, and that'll bobble around the pool and add chlorine to your pool. Years ago, we would do a inline feeder, or we could have it offline, which would be off to the side with a hose going to it. Either way, what I do want to say is when you're adding chlorine tablets, do not lean your head over. The chlorine gas in here will be quite strong, okay? So you open this up, you put your tablet feeders in here, tablets in the feeder, and you control the erosion by the dial. How much water you have flowing through there will give you what your erosion rate is, and how you can add chlorine to your pool. And there's a diagram of the tablets in there. Also, for those of you that have sustain tablets, those will go in your skimmer. They are different than the dichlor tablets. Do not put them in the feeder. Make sure you know what type of feeder you have and what type of tablets you have. It's important that you don't mix those two. Okay, chlorine generator. So, for those of you that have a chlorine generator, it's a cell with electrical plates in it. We put salt in your pool. In the bigger pools, we put about 400 pounds of salt in the pool. An electrical current will crack the salt molecule into a sodium gas and a chlorine molecule. And I think that Matt will talk a little more about that a little further on. Another way is with the UV and ozone. You may have a Pentair UV system on. The last year or two, we've been going to the Hayward unit, and now the new ones are going to be combined. The Hayward ozone and UV will be combined into one box in one unit, and there won't be two-piece. So with the shortages out there, we've been changing what kind of equipment we're grabbing, just because it's what's available. And Matt's up here.
Alright, so now we're going to get into the water chemistry of your pools. So this is going to dive into kind of what we're testing for and all that good stuff. Pool water chemistry, the importance: testing, water balance, sanitize, oxidation, enhancements, algae prevention. It's kind of break down how we're going to kind of dive into, get into. But purpose of testing: to monitor sanitizer level. Is this to monitor your chlorine level? And then check out all the balancers. So pH, total alkalinity, hardness, and your cyanuric acid. So I can't stress enough the importance of testing. We don't know until we test. So I always encourage, weekly at-home testing, just to stay on top of it. It's a lot easier to change all this stuff a little bit than to forget about it, let it go for 5 weeks, and then be like, oh my gosh, this is really out of whack. I need to add 30 pounds or something to get it out there. That's where we struggle with it. It's easy to change the stuff a little bit, tough just to forget about and let it go. So, just very important to test. At home, you can do a strip test. It's just a little strip test. It's just a color chart. It doesn't tell you exactly what range you're in, but it tells you a broad spectrum. If you're okay, if you're in this range, you're good. It tells you a different color if you're outside of that range, But so it's quick, it's easy, it's at home. You can always bring your water in here, and they have a spin lab. That will tell you exactly your levels. You have 2.8 chlorine level. You have a pH of this and that. It tells you exact. But at home testing, you just want to make sure you don't get water in. All of you should carry, sometime with the strips at home, but it's easy. You just want to dive down to get a sample of water, about down 2 feet under the water. Take up that, and then you can dump it in your sample strip in there. And it just is a color chart. So you just compare the colors to the back of that bottle, see if your colors match up, if you're in range. It's very simple. That's we just don't want to get any moisture in the bottle, as long as you always use dry fingers. That's this more. There's still moisture in there. Besides that, they'll last the whole season.
Put them in the house.
Yep. Don't get light moisture
Yeah,
in there.
yeah, don't keep them outside for moisture.
Yeah.
And Leah, you're a big fan of them taking the water inside for the sunlight?
Yep.
Okay, so it's easier to read the test when you don't have the glare of the sun on the tester.
And you can always text a picture to Leah right? I know she's done this before, of the strip with the thing, and just take a
Now,
picture of
just
it.
for
Bob
clarity,
hates it.
just for clarity,
So you know.
you send me a text of a picture, I'll tell you what's that, I don't know what it is. I'm gonna make you tell me what the number is, unless you tell me you're colorblind, and some men are. But, I'm gonna make you tell me what number it is, and the reason is we're gonna go through this, in detail shortly, and you'll realize how the chart, how the readings and the chemicals really are important.
So now this is what we're testing for. So whether you bring your water sample in here and get it tested, or you're at home, we're gonna be testing for pH, alkalinity, calcium hardness, CYA, or cyanuric acid. And then TDS is what we're gonna discuss a little bit later on, but those are gonna be the 4 main things that we're testing, along with your sanitizer level. So it's just basically those 4 things, and then what your chlorine reading is, so the 5 things that whether you're at home or you come in here, but that's what we're testing for. Now we come, here's the levels that we want. So this is the good range. 7.2 to 7.8 is the range of pH. 80 to 150 is alkalinity. Calcium hardness, 200 to 400. 30 to 50 for the CYA, and then the PDS is a broad range. We'll get into that too. So these are the ideal ranges we want to go into. So pH, this is the potential of hydrogen. Basically, it's how acidic or how basic the water is. So there's a good, I think, going to the next screen. But everything causes pH and alkalinity to change. It's going to be constantly changing. You go swimming, you dive in, the family had the party over, you can test your pH on a daily basis, and it's not going to be the same. Or a rainstorm passes through here, dumps in an inch of rain into your pool, that's going to change the pH. It depends on what pH of that. So it's constantly changing. The best thing is just on a weekly basis, just to know what range we're in. That's the importance of testing, because it is constantly changing. It's never going to get locked in and just stay that out. It's just ever changing.
And that's a good point, because later on, we usually have a lot of questions about covers and chlorination and that. The material that comes in the pool, whether you have your cover on or open, or if you have an above ground pool and you don't have a cover, that's gonna change your chemistry. What we had a customer in here yesterday morning, a lot of pine trees, a lot of pollen. So it depends on, again, your environment, your trees, your, whatever's blowing in, or rain, or.
Yep. But this is also why I don't want you to test on a daily basis. You're gonna drive yourself mad, right? One day you test, your pH is at 7.3, next day it's at 7.4, 7.5. It's just gonna constantly shift a little bit on you, but just, I think the weekly testing is just a good thing. Here's just a kind of some basic things on what we talk about. Vinegar, that's gonna be a low pH, it's very acidic, that's why it actually helps out to clean up some of this stuff, this is low acidity. But you kind of see some basic things. Milk is pretty close to that neutral range. And you see some very basic items, ammonia, some of that stuff down there. Battery acid, vinegar, very acidic, so that's a low pH. We want to stay in that 7.2 to 7.8 range.
So, question on what you said about not testing daily, so say your chemicals do get a bit out of whack, so say you're in the 6 or whatever range for pH.
Yep.
You take corrective action, you know, adding a pound of pH off or whatever it is.
Yep.
When should you do the subsequent tests to see if it's working or if you've added it off? When-
Yep, I would say a couple, give it 4 or 5 hours. I like let that stuff mixture with it, but
Yeah.
I think Leon will 6 to 8 hours, that's like that.
Okay.
I would say that's something,
Depends on how bad it is.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, if
correct.
it's bad, like for example, chlorine, we tell you to dump the chlorine in the shallow end of the pool and test in the deep, and you can test an hour or two later. If there's nothing on the stick, keep going.
Yeah.
My
yes.
analogy is if you're changing oil on a big, big semi or dump truck, you don't know how many gallons you gotta put in there until you get on the stick, put in another gallon or two.
Okay.
Once you're on the stick, then whether it's a chlorine stick or a dipstick on an engine, then it's like, okay, now you can add a little bit at a time.
Okay.
But you're not even on a scoreboard yet.
Mhm. But yeah, for the pH, the chlorine is, you can always add more for that.
Yeah.
And pH is one, so. Why is pH important? So pH is gonna be the most important thing. It affects, I always say it's like having a good environment, right? If we're in the 7.2 to 7.8 range, that's a good environment. Your chlorine's gonna be effective, just makes it a good, everything is in working order, right? When we get out of that range, there's just a lot of bad things can go wrong, So I always refer to, we talk about water clarity, swimmer comfort, longevity of your equipment, and then chemical efficiency is gonna be a big one. But if we go on the basic side, so on the high side, 7.8, 8.0, 8.2, your chlorine becomes less effective. It basically stops killing, So you can say, oh, I have 3 parts chlorine, but it's not out there doing its job. There's a good graph later on, we'll kind of see you guys think. And vice versa, when we're low and it's very acidic, your chlorine becomes too powerful. So we're gonna burn up a lot of your chlorine because it's killing everything out there, So it's just the 7.2 to 7.8 is just gonna be key. We wanna be within that range. That's gonna be a good environment. These bad things won't be happening. We can have scaling, other issues can happen. But since we always want to try and stay in that good environment range.
Matt's gonna cover that on the next slide, but that's the first thing I wanna ask you, okay? What is your pH? Don't tell me how much chlorine you put in, what is your pH? And I wanna get that, you guys, register that the pH is gonna determine how the chlorine works.
That's exactly it. Low pH, this is acidic. These are some of the things that can kind of be happening. But again, it's just, you can make your chlorine stronger or weaker just by shifting your pH. I can have a pool that has 8.2 pH and they have 3 parts chlorine. I can have a pool that has 7.2. 7.2, I can feel safe swimming in it. It's good, chlorine's doing its job. The 8.2 pH, it's only a matter of time before something bad happens. The chlorine's not out there killing its effectiveness, but that's just, you can, switch it. Good thing is, you can test for it and we can switch. If we need to increase pH or lower pH, we just, pH decreaser, muriatic acid. One of those 2 things, just to lower it. We need to increase it, vice versa. We have pH increaser to do it. So there's just the importance of testing, and also we have products that can raise and lower it for you too. So let's go through on that. Next one will be total alkalinity. So this is kind of the next thing. This is basically, as I refer as the buffer of pH. So this is going to be another one that you test on the same reading chart. We look for 80 to 150 is kind of the range that we're looking for. And basically what this allows us to do is change pH in how we want to change. So if we have 0 total alkalinity and I have a high pH, I want it to be lowered, I'm going to start zigzagging. My pH is going to skyrocket down. I have no buffer. So it's just kind of the skyrockets down. Vice versa, if I have super high total alkalinity and I have high pH, I want to lower it, it's gonna be tough to make it lower because I have too much buffer. So it just takes a lot to move it a little bit, you know, but if we have that range, 80 to 150, now we can move it to where we want to. So it's just a buffer for pH is all it's.
I just have a quick question. I had some issues with this kind of a scenario at the very beginning of the season last year where I was constantly having to bring the pH level down. And I'd get it down and it'd stay there a few days and then the same thing would happen and I'd have to get it down. Is there a way to stabilize that or do something like different
Are
to
you
keep
a
it?
saltwater or tablet?
No, I'm tab sustained.
No, that's the thing, okay.
pH is gonna go up.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
So
when you
sustain-
use sustain, that pushes the pH.
So sustain does have a pH of 10.8.
Yeah, so Jerry,
So-
every time you're putting a tablet in, the sustained tablets are high in pH.
Yes.
And that's also, but that's also the same for chlorine generators, so if you have a saltwater pool, you're gonna be, when the chlorine generator works, you're gonna be driving the pH up. When you're putting sustained tablets in, you're driving the pH up. When you put liquid in, liquid chlorine, it's got a pH of 10 or 12 or something.
Yep, liquid's even higher, so
Yes.
12.8.
So then that's gonna drive it up. So you need to know, or, you know, tell us what you're putting in, cause when you come in here on a Saturday and you have your water tested, I'm gonna wanna know, okay, how you treating it? Are you putting in something that your pH is normally going up, or you're putting in something that the pH is normally going down? Okay, so if you're doing granular tablets only, mostly, you'd be driving your pH down. So if you walk in here and say, I want my water tested, okay, well, are you using a product that your pH is gonna tend to go down, or is it something your pH is gonna tend to go up? So we need to know if you're on the high side, you're gonna keep going up, or you're on the low side and you're gonna go up. And then we need to know, then we can tell you, advise you what
So
to
you
do.
can always be fighting that to lower it down. You know, most people on the pure and sustain, you know, we know that pH is 10.8, so it's gonna wanna constantly, as you burn through those pucks,
Yeah,
it's gonna wanna push it up. So we are gonna be adding the America, you know, to.
and that's just the way you
Yep,
handle it.
that's just the way
There's
I'll-
nothing wrong with doing
Correct.
that on a weekly basis if you have to do
It's
it.
exactly.
Okay, that's
exactly
my
it.
question,
Yep.
if that was a normal
Yep,
scenario.
and that's exactly,
Okay.
and this is,
Not
and this is
daily,
growing.
but we.
No,
Yeah,
no.
okay, yeah.
People on the vice versa, the old pucks have a very low pH, the triplet before sustain, and people always fight to keep their pH up, because that is, you know, so there's always negative, you know, these things. But yeah, it's just knowing that
Okay.
that's I'm adding, my chlorine source is a higher pH, so it's gonna always push it up, you know, and it's
Okay.
gonna go through.
Because I have the same issue, and I've had it for 5 years, and now, cause I'll go through as much pH down as I do those sustained tablets, basically.
I go through a lot of it too, I wouldn't say as much, but I do go through a lot of it.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, you threw the word in there, the acid, are you better off using the pH down or the muriatic acid?
So the muriatic acid is a little bit stronger.
It is.
It's gonna, and that's my, so if I need to move it a lot, I go to, and Leah, you might wanna jump in on this too, but I like to use the muriatic acid. A lot of people don't like to touch the muriatic acid, I'll be honest with
It's
you.
caustic.
And it's caustic.
Why?
A lot of
If you
people
want,
don't.
just don't breathe it and don't spill it.
Yep,
Okay.
I mean,
that's the
you
thing,
know,
but
don't
some
wear good
people-
clothes, cause you know, I mean, well, I'm just saying, open it up and, you know, don't chug it, cause it'll gurgle.
Kneel down on the side of your pool and then open it up and then just.
Yeah.
You can just go right in the deep end and do a column,
But
you
you
know.
wanna pour it
don't
like you're pouring a
splash it.
glass of milk, like Jerry said, you wanna pour it like you're pouring milk, and you don't wanna go chug, 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 cause then it splashes on your concrete or on your shoes.
Okay.
And it's acid, it's
It is,
caustic,
but it's,
you know, just, yeah.
it is more stronger than your grain. No, I mean, that's
No,
why
the blue is-
if I need more stronger, oops,
The
The
blue is,
acid blue is safer.
it's
The
safer,
acid blue is safer,
it's not the same muriatic acid that you get in the hardware store. It is safer and it's not as not
Yeah,
as,
but it works just the same,
now that's
Okay.
also gonna take down your alkalinity.
depending on how you
Okay,
add
now-
it to the pool.
Right, so when you do that, it's gonna bring your alkalinity down, which, you know, if you need to bring the pH down, that's what's gonna happen, or vice versa. So you might get in a war where you're dealing with pH and alkalinity, you bring it down, up and up and down. At some point, then that's where Leah's gonna say, okay, look, your pool's one that we're just not gonna get where you wanna be, you know, and pick the battle, or pick the war, not the battle, you know?
Yeah, so depending on if the alkalinity is high, then I'm gonna have you address them both together. But if your alkalinity is within range, then you're gonna be adding it completely different.
okay,
So if it's where you have to bring the alkalinity and the pH down together, we're doing it in the deep end, in a column, with the equipment off. If you're just having to lower the pH, you can do the pH down, Or if you wanna do it faster, you do the muriatic acid and you do it in the shallow end in front of your return,
Oh,
so that
okay.
you have movement, so that it doesn't attack the alkalinity and bringing that down even
As-
further.
As much, it's still
Right,
not.
it's still gonna bring it down, but it's just not gonna do a
If
drastic
you-
drop.
If you need to lower the alkalinity and the pH, you go in the deep end with the pump off so the water's stagnant, and you pour it very slowly and completely,
Then
and
you
when
know
it
it's
hits the
it.
bottom, it's gonna look like a
Mushroom
atomic
cloud.
mushroom cloud. And it's gonna hit the bottom and move and do this, and that'll get your pH and your alkalinity. And what Leah's saying is if you do it by the return fitting so that it's dissipated, it's only gonna get the pH and not the alkalinity.
Okay,
So it depends on how you apply the acid,
sure.
whether you get one or
But
both.
it still gets some, it just
Of course.
focuses more, you know?
Yeah.
Basically decreasing it, we can take both of them down. When we increase, we can increase the alkalinity increaser versus pH increaser. It does focus a lot more on the increase.
Okay.
So, but when we decrease, we're gonna take both of them down, and then how we do it, column versus things.
And that's
Just
good
depends
to
on
know.
where you're
Well,
at.
but we're still gonna bring both down, it just
Okay,
focuses in one more on it. So
Okay.
increasing, we can kind of focus more so to increase it,
okay,
you know?
makes
That's
sense.
just the things, but yeah, so this is the whole. Again, it's just a measure, basically it's for the ability for pH to resist change, you know, so that's why we get that 80 to 150, that just allows us to move pH in a nice up and down motion, basically, it's just the thing. So when we're too low, we're gonna be zigzagging our pH, when we're too high in alkalinity, it's gonna be resisting too much, it's just too much buffer, so it's just tougher to move our pH.
So on that last issue then, if we're between the 80 and 150, you're saying it's gonna be the best optimal for our condition with the pH down and the
Yes.
sustained.
Yep,
Yeah, if your alkalinity is in range, you're right, then just go for the pH.
yep, exactly. That's
And I
the simple
found
one.
that to work, I kind of figured it out like a little bit as I went through the season last year, and I found that to work.
But again, these are all ranges, okay, this isn't
Nothing, if you're at 190, it's not like that your pool is gonna go over, you know, this is always, these are environments, right? When you can survive your pool, if it drops down to 7.1 pH, it's not, next day is just gonna be completely, you know, other things. It's just a bad environment, which eventually, things can happen over time, you know, so. It's not that if you're out of these ranges, it's okay, you can just kind of work on fixing it, but it's not like that, oh my gosh, I've been at 210 alkalinity for 5 minutes, my pool is just gonna be demolished. That's not like this, you know, it's just over the long term, things can happen. This is a bad environment versus a good environment we're talking about. So, but again, the good thing is this testing, so you can know, and then we can always raise alkalinity or then decrease alkalinity, like we were talking about with muriatic acid or the alkalinity increaser. Those are still things. The next one, calcium hardness, 200 to 400 is the range here. So this is just how much hardness is in your water. So on a fresh fill pool, if you just had your pool built last fall or this year, you get fresh water in there, we're gonna actually basically add calcium to the water. And that's just because,
Not around here.
We don't have to.
well, it depends on where your
Water's
pool is.
hard.
Okay, yep. So if you're around here, it sounds like you have high calcium in the water. But if you're far away, again, it's just test water. But we wanna be at 200 to 400, we're basically satisfied. Our water is aggressive. If you're at 0 calcium, your water is gonna be searching for that hardness. So it's gonna basically take minerals from where we can get it, whether that's your equipment, or that's the ladder, anywhere it can find it, it's gonna pull metals away. So that's basically why we're 200 to 400 for calcium, you know, so that's where sometimes you can be adding calcium to satisfy it. It's kind of like, you know, the water's angry, all of a sudden you add calcium, now you're at 200 to 400, it's satisfied. It's not gonna be searching for that, so that's the range that we wanna do. I heard a lot of people are on sustain tablets in here, so you can have a little bit of calcium for each puck that you burn through, you're gonna have a little bit of calcium that's building up, you know, that goes through. So, if you open, I know your pool's opened up 2 years ago, you're gonna probably open up and give me good on calcium, you're not gonna add it, you're gonna probably be in that 200 to 400 range.
And I didn't fight that too much.
It doesn't, it's a
It's-
one-time.
It's a one-time a year,
They
it's
had
a
a
test.
pretty easy time with that.
Yeah, with calcium and,
Calcium and the next one, in the cyanic acid,
Yeah.
it's just,
One thing.
it doesn't dilute. So, once we put it in there, it's in there for life. The only way to dilute it is fresh water.
Water change.
Yes.
Water change.
So, and that dilutes your water. So, if I get super high in calcium, 3, 4, 5 years from now, I'm gonna take out a chunk of water, add fresh water, hopefully it's not high in calcium. You know, and then that will dilute it down, because now I went from 450 with a bunch of fresh water, now I might be at 275, you know, I still diluted it down. But this is one time a year, as I said, springtime, this is really, all you have to worry about this is your first water test, right? If you're low in calcium, add some increaser. If you're not, you might be at 325, you're good, don't worry about it, you can be good for the year. So it's just one of those things where it's just making sure your water is satisfied, is just basically. It's kind of, think about me, if I miss lunch, I get angry, I'm annoying, I'm not, all of a sudden I have a Snickers bar, I'm happy, I'm satisfied, I'm good, This is kind of like the same thing with calcium. Cyanuric acid is gonna be the next one, this is on the test too. So, this, think of it as just suntan lotion for your chlorine.
Now, Matt's product is so good, they have 3 names.
Yes.
It's called conditioner, it's called stabilizer, and cyanuric acid.
Cyanuric acid, all three the same thing.
Yeah, so they named it 3 times. Okay?
Yes.
Second.
But so what we want, the ideal level is 30 to 50, is above 30. It has to be more than 30. But just think of, if you're at 0 fresh fill, you're at 0 CYA, sun is literally just eating up your chlorine. I'll have people say, I can't hold chlorine. I say, what's your CYA? What's your cyanuric acid? It's 0, it's a brand new pool, I just filled it up. Sun is burning up your chlorine even without using it. That's all it is. We add cyanuric acid, now you get suntan lotion on that chlorine molecule, now sun doesn't burn it. So that's all this is, it's just adding suntan lotion to keep our chlorine out there in the killing pools, But this is gonna, again, this is springtime. Once it goes in there, it's in there for life. We can't get it out besides diluting water. So that's why this and your calcium is gonna be springtime things. Are we low in CYA? Yes. You add it. You can add a liquid version. It's a 1 gallon jug. It's a heavy, thick primer paint. Refill it down the back. Go swimming. You're good. Or you can do a granular version. That's gonna take probably about 4 to 6 days to dissolve in the pool. But you can just dump it in there, it will, take a couple days to go down, disappear, and then you're good. So it's just a matter of just testing. For this, we wanna make sure our water temperature is above 68 degrees, because we're not gonna get an accurate reading if it's below that. So if I tested Rob's pool outside right now, I'm not gonna get an accurate reading of cyanuric acid. It's just not, doesn't get an accurate reading in the freezing cold water, But this is very important. This is suntan lotion for your chlorine. Once you put it in there, it's in there for life. And then you people with sustained tabs, the old tablets, trichlor, used to be mixed with chlorine and CYA, so they would build up as they burn through chlorine tabs. A lot of you are on sustained tabs, you don't have the CYA in your pucks. You're mixed with calcium. So this is gonna be especially important at the beginning of the year to be closer probably to 50 to 80, because you will slowly dilute throughout the season. Because you're not getting a weekly dose of it, it's just once you put it in there. If you only get the 31 parts, I can tell you 3 weeks from now, you're gonna be under that. Just because of new water that comes in, it's just nothing. So we do wanna be a little bit higher, I'd say closer to 50 to 70 is where we wanna start. But you get to that level, you're gonna be good for the year. So again, it's just important to test, raise it, we can just add it.
I'm sorry, what temperature did you say?
70.
Yeah, 70 is the
Okay.
same, yeah.
And that's the same when we open pools in spring. We don't test the water, the water's too cold and it's layered and stagnant. You need to circulate your pump for a couple days and you need to get it warmer, so.
And do we have anyone on the salt, is everyone on sustain? I know I talked to
Any
most
salt
people,
test
sounds like,
chlorine generators in here?
No
Okay.
chlorine?
I think we got,
on salt.
I don't remember.
I thought we were getting a chlorine.
Okay, yeah.
Cell chlorine generator
Yep,
because
that's-
of shortages.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, and if that's the case, then that's this cell right here.
Yeah, and so that's
And
gonna
we've been
be,
doing, you too probably, right? Yeah, and so, it's kinda come and gone with the availability of chlorine or whatnot, but yeah, chlorine generators are fantastic, so
Yeah.
we'll get into that next.
and then that's just the whole important for the CYA, especially, because again, you're just not getting it from
You're
anywhere
not
else.
adding
So
tab-
you
what
need
he's
to
saying
add it, it's just,
Yeah, you're not adding tablets, you're making your own chlorine,
yeah.
so that's why you have to adjust it ahead of time.
Yeah, here's how it goes. So this is total dissolved solid. So I always like to talk about this because I really like to get into there's a saying in our industry of old water versus good water and new water, you know? So I always like to bring an example of, if I'm making iced tea at home, I have a glass, I have a tablespoon of iced tea, I just dump it in there, I mix it up, it dissolves, it's good. If I kept on dumping in 5 more teaspoons of iced tea, it's gonna eventually stop dissolving in the water. And it'll start building up, you know, you'll see at the bottom, just a little mound of iced tea sitting there. I mix it, it won't go into solution, you know. That's the same thing that happens with the pool. Everything we add to our pool builds up a little bit of the solids in our pool. So over time, there's this builds up in our pool, basically the water becomes old. It stops taking things. I would say 5 years is a good marker, but we can. That's what we test for total dissolved solids. When this range gets really high, now my chlorine won't work effectively. You know, it's a bad environment, you know, but new water is just fresh water, it dilutes that total dissolved solids, you know, so I think, Rob, you say 6, you know, I mean, would you say 5 years is a good marker?
5, 6 years.
Yep.
So where he's going with this is the water is gonna get old and saturated, and we're gonna come and wash and clean and pump all your water out and refill it.
Yeah.
Only in fiberglass pools.
Yeah. So man, it's just, I see people that, you know, they constantly get cloudy water, I mean, it's just, you'll see some effects of it. It's just when my sanitizer's not working and killing stuff, and it's just, well, when's the last time you changed a water or got a big chunk of fresh water? And they're like, well, I have an indoor pool, I never get, you know, I never, you know, like, well, maybe it's time to get a big chunk of.
But with that being said too, when you're fighting that in July or August, we're gonna tell you to ride it out, and then we do it right now. We're
Yeah.
gonna
That
do
was
2
gonna
yet.
be my question, when do you do it?
Right now, we did
Yeah.
2 yesterday, 2 today, 2
Okay.
Monday,
Yeah.
you know, we were gonna pump them, wash them, clean them, and fill them, so.
But that's why I say about 5 years, because there's many other reasons why cloudy waters happens, you know, if you have a brand new pool, you shouldn't need to change
Yeah,
this,
but
you know.
5 years goes fast.
It does, it does.
We only got 2, we got
It does,
2.
you know, so it's just the whole thing, but that's why we can test for the total dissolved solids, you can kind of see that range, you know, basically if you're above that source water. So it's just important that I just like to talk about, but again, this is kind of like cyanuric acid and calcium, the only way is fresh water to dilute it back down.
And at that point, then we get the advantage that we can scrub, that's a brand new pool, but I mean, we can scrub the whole pool at a time.
So go through. How do we keep our pool crystal clear? So we don't want cloudy, we don't want algae, all that good stuff. So how do we sanitize, oxidation, and algae prevention? Those are kind of the 3 things we're just gonna kind of go through. So the main point of chlorine, when we talk about chlorine, the main point is for it to sanitize your water, right? It's for it to kill viruses and bacteria. That's the main point of chlorine. It's just, it's supposed to float around, and if we're all swimming in the pool out there, chlorine's job is to kill whatever bacteria and viruses are in the water before it spreads around to people. So that's, when we talk about sanitize, that's what we're talking about, is to kill. Here's some pictures of what it's killing, you know? We don't want to spread this stuff around. Yeah, right, you see, you know, a little stuff in there, but this is what chlorine's main job is to kill, you know? I saw an interesting study, I think they said that 20% of chlorine gets used up on this stuff, 80% of chlorine gets used up about all the other organic load that's in there, you know, we'll get discussions about that too, but this is the main point. 1 point of chlorine is good, that's considered sanitized. I like to say 1 to 3 parts is what we're shooting for. So when you do the testing, we want 1, 2, 3 parts chlorine in the water, basically at all times. That's what we're shooting for, that's what kills germs, bacteria, and viruses. So this is just a little scientific of what happens, how when chlorine goes into the water, how it reacts, and the byproducts, you can kind of just see the breakdown of it. I love this graph because going back into we should probably move this to the pH.
Yeah,
So, but
this is-
this is just really good, so, you
Pay
know,
attention to this one,
Yep.
and I think it's in your book, I don't know what page, but this is very important.
Yep.
This is what I was saying before.
so this is the in range what we're talking about, in the other right? pH 7.2 to 7.8, this is what's considered as good. So, if I have a pH of 7.2, 66% of my free available chlorine is in killing mode. So if I have 1 part chlorine out there, 66% of that's out there killing.
So 0.6.
Yes, 0.6, you know. If I go to 7.5, 50% of that, which is still good. If I go to 7.8, you see the drop 33%. But this is all acceptable ranges, we're good with that. If you see, I go to 8.0 and 8.5 pH, 9% and 24%.
So this is when you call me and you say, well, I put chlorine in, I'm like, I don't care what you did, what's your pH? And then you're gonna tell me how much chlorine you put in, and I'm like, let's back up. If you're at 8 and you have 1 part, you only have 0.24 in your chlorine. So I'm gonna ask you, what's your pH? You need to lower the pH so that your pH, your chlorine is more effective.
Yeah, that's exactly it. So in your head, just think, if I have problems with my pool, I want a lower pH so my chlorine's out there more killing stuff, you know? So if you get some things, but that's why we get, I'd say 99% of the times that people, having issues or get algae,
Yeah.
it's gonna be the pH drop on you, and you get a high pH, and it's only a matter of time before something
So,
else is.
if you have an above ground pool and you put a lot of liquid in and your liquid is high in pH and you're driving your pH up and you don't have cover and the sun's eating out your cyanuric acid, you don't have any chlorine that's working and you have very little chlorine and your pH is high, you're going to have algae, period. You know, so you need to just say, hey, I need to keep the pH in line and keep everything else balanced, and then you'll have a clean pool.
Yeah,
Can you use a solar cover with the above ground?
Sure.
Because we're not gonna have a heater,
So
so.
that's fine.
oh yeah,
But that doesn't keep the acid rain out and the pollen and the dust and the dirt, and then every time you wind the cover up, all the shit goes right.
Sure, sure,
So, I
okay.
mean, that's not gonna help you a whole lot, but I mean, you know, it keeps your heat in, that's about what you're gonna get there.
Okay,
And evaporation, keep the evaporation down.
so this is the 2 chlorine categories, stabilized and unstabilized, and by that we just mean basically, does the chlorine have CYA with it, which is the old chlorine pucks, the trichlor pucks, or unstabilized means no CYA with it. So that's what sustain is on here, the calcium hypochlorite, this is sustain. Liquid chlorine, so if you're on a salt cell, that's right over here too, you know, it's just the thing. So we're basically in this room, we're using unstabilized chlorine, which is just, all that means is it's important to add cyanuric acid at the beginning of the year if we're low to test for it. But this goes in a little bit of the calhental, I'm sorry, the liquid chlorine, and so it's just a pH, you can see the big thing is this, so all the salt cells, pH of 12.6 is on there, so,
For liquid or sustained.
Yep.
Again, high pH.
yeah, so it's just the whole things. I'm not gonna go into this is trichlor, this is a typical chlorine box. We won't
This
go into
was the
that.
common tablet, however, there was a chlorine shortage because one of the 2 plants got hit by a hurricane and they're still not up to production.
Yeah, and then the salt cell here, we kind of go into. So this is just, and do we have, you said 1 salt cell? So is it, so this, 2, yep.
You're gonna go into that?
So this is just a process, you guys are just producing chlorine, you know, Rob calls it a salt, chlorine generator, and that's just, as the salt water passes through it, electrolysis, and then also now you're producing liquid chlorine. So it's just your way of how you're getting chlorine into the pool. This is the things. Oxidation. So now this is where we talk about how we get rid of all the gunk that builds up. So I always like to, you know, here's swimmers, fertilizers, rain, everything that's kind of going into your pool. Chlorine is left to kill, basically. So I always like to talk about, have you ever walked into an indoor hotel pool? And the first thing you smell is what?
chlorine,
Right? You walk in there, oh, you know, as
it's
a
like,
kid,
holy cow.
I thought, great, it's sanitized, let's go swimming, go jump in, you know.
Go ahead, ask your question.
I took this job, and then I realized that that's not the case. So when you walk into those indoor pools, you know, you have a chlorine molecule, doesn't smell, it's floating around, it's free, it's ready to kill. That's the good chlorine. And if it combines with a lotion or oil, it gets what we call combined chlorine. That causes the chloramine release, and that's what we smell. So basically, you walk into these indoor, and it makes sense, a hotel pool isn't probably the best kept. They're not using these add-ons and UVs and things we'll talk about. So you just get these chlorine molecules, and if it's being used, there's a lot of gunk. We are dumping in a lot. We come out of the pool cleaner than we were before. But that's what's happening. You get this the chlorine molecule says, I'm gonna try and break you down. I can't, oh no, I'm combined. and now it causes that smell. So I always thought it was interesting because I used to think as a kid, oh, I smell chlorine, it's sanitized, I'll jump in. And there is, well, there might not be so much chlorine in there because it's a lot of combined chlorine in there. So this is just kind of, you know, a little thing. So here we have free chlorine molecules.
And that's
floating
not
around.
gonna smell bad.
Yep.
You have that.
That's free. Now this is total chlorine. So now you see the chlorine molecules got combined. So you're gonna get a reading of total chlorine and free chlorine. That difference is what's combined.
And combined is used or dirty chlorine.
Yep. You know. So how do we get rid of that? We have to shock. So it's called breakpoint chlorination. When we say shock, I say we want to get chlorine up to 10. So normally we have 1 to 3 parts chlorine on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. We probably want to be shocking a pool, and it just means elevate your chlorine to over 10. It's kind of like starting over. Like here you see the combined chlorine, we shock it, now you see it, it frees up. The bad chlorine goes away, now we have a bunch of free chlorine again.
And you have to know that it's free chlorine, not total.
Yes, so that's just the difference. Total chlorine versus free chlorine. Free chlorine is good chlorine, total chlorine, you know, that difference is combined.
Total chlorine is how many dump trucks I have, free chlorine is how many can go to work today. One's getting painted, one's in the shop, and therefore you only have a couple that are available to work, and that's the same.
We'll kind of get into it, you know, it's really all about usage. You know, when we talk about how much your pool is being used, someone that has, you know, the neighborhood, all the neighbors and kids are constantly swimming, that's a lot more usage. We might need to shock on a weekly basis for that type of pool. If it's just, you know, husband and wife and they're swimming twice a week out there, you know, maybe it's bi-weekly. You know, it's just, you'll get a routine, you'll see what works for you, but when we say shock, it means elevate chlorine to above 10. And that's just, highlight your filter, it's like a Sunday night. That's when I would shock, just at night before you go to bed. You add your chlorine, you can do liquid chlorine or a granular. You shock it, the next morning, you're gonna be good and ready to swim. You know, so it's just kind of like we're starting over. It's a big implosion, it's gonna kill everything out in the water, free up the chlorine again, and now we're ready to go. So you're not gonna wanna shock before you have it in the pool, okay? No one wants to go swimming in 15 parts chlorine. So it's not like, all right, I'm having everyone over to go swim and I shock right there. That's what we don't want.
When you shock, let's say you have other water chemistry that week that you need to address and you need to add something.
We're gonna talk about
Okay.
that, so I know where I wanna address that. Table that for just a second, because,
Sure.
no, and I'm glad you're asking questions, but we're gonna come into that with your other, additives.
Things, okay, yep.
Yeah, so we'll hit that real right to the point.
So algae prevention, this is what we're trying to prevent right here. No one wants a green algae pool. You know, that's just the whole thing. I will say, every one of your pools does have algae currently in it. Algae blooms are constantly happening on a daily basis. Your chlorine and other things are just killing it. We don't see it. You don't see it until your algae blooms gets above your level that you can handle, and then that's when you actually see it. So you guys win 95% of the daily war battles on this. So, you know, this is what happens when the blooms get above what we can pull. You know. But algae, where does algae come from? It comes from the wind. Like I said, it comes from a lot of places, but it's in there currently and it's growing. It's just we're handling it. But that's a green pool. We don't want that. Here's what happens the next step. So we have a green pool. This is a picture of it being killed. So again, it's gonna be cloudy, dead algae. You can kind of see it, you know, clean up. This is the process, vacuuming the dead algae away. Then you get that kind of,
And that's good, when you see a silver pool or a gray pool, that means that algae is dead, it's not green, so that means you're making progress.
and we get back to the crystal clear. But this process takes days, if not a week. We just don't want to go there. You know, it's just, the whole point is we don't want a green pool. We don't want green algae for you guys. So that kind of goes in there. So how did algae get in there? You know, these are kinds of things on what happens. And this is really where the other things. I know Rob talked about the circulation and filtration earlier. Chemicals are just 1/3 of what's going on. Your filter is 1/3 and the circulation is 1/3. They all work together. If I don't rinse off my cartridge filter at all and I let it clump up, it's not doing its job. Now my chemicals in the circulation have to work that much harder. You know, so anytime one of these you're lacking on, it's just your other sides have to work that much difficult. But this is kind of just how algae, the blooms are in there. No one wants to see the algae monster, that's what we're trying to prevent when it goes through there. But typically, what are we doing? It's just an algicide. We like to use a 90-day algicide. Dump one in at the beginning of the year. It lasts for 90 days. It slowly releases itself. Otherwise, we can do it in polyquat, but that's a weekly dose basis. So most pool owners will do an algicide whether it's weekly or you just want to do a long-term dump it in for opening. Or I say dump one in July 4th weekend. That gets it to closing if you're doing it in 90 days. Otherwise, you can just do a weekly application of it. There will be initial dose, and then you can do like 4 to 6 ounces a week, and make sure you get in there. But that's a typical algicide to help doing that. To kill it, the same thing. If you ever do get green algae, you can use this green aid. It's a killer or an algicide. Either one. It's just ways of actually killing it, you know. And so, just ways to. Hopefully we don't get to that point, but here's what algae needs. So this is what 7th grade, I was in front of it, is like 7th grade science textbook. You remember way back then. Anything green needs these 5 things to cell divide and grow. So in a pool, sunlight, water, carbon dioxide, nitrates, and phosphates, which is just food for algae. But in a pool, we all have sunlight, it all has water, all these are plentiful. Phosphates are just the one things, that's just food for algae, that we can actually test and remove. So that's kind of why the phosphate portion is important to this, because we can actually prevent it from, you know. I can't take away the sunlight from the pool. Everyone's gonna get sunlight. I can't take away the water, you know, it's just a thing. So it's just the limited nutrients, which is just why it's important. I'd like to refer to an example of Lake Erie. I remember years ago, it kept on getting these huge algae blooms. You know, you could see it from space some years, and some, you know, we'll find out how this spring is. But so much algae would grow in there that I was wondering why was that occurring. The whole northern half of Lake Erie's farmland, and they realized that runoff, the fertilizers from the farms, was just super high in phosphate. So you're dumping in huge amounts of food for algae to bloom, which we know is occurring in the water, and that's why you're getting these huge, you know, green algae swamps in there. They discontinue it. So that's what we don't want, is this algae occurring in there.
And algae is pretty rare with our pools, you know, you have the automatic cover that keeps the sun out, you have good circulation, good chemicals, so we don't have a lot of algae.
And that's what we talked about, but with the way that you're setting up with the UV, and if we do a weekly dose of enzymes, it's enhanced, these are enhancers, what we call. You're taking away all the organic load, basically. So I don't know, Rob
We should have an
pools.
ozonator in there, because that's another way to oxidize.
Yeah, you know, but I was saying Rob's pools, you know, it's just the ways that we don't have much if we kind of do these enhancements, because you're taking away all that organic load.
Before you move on, not green, not black, not blue. A clear jellyfish, like, I call it algae, but it's like you can see it moving around in the water, and you go with your skimmer, and you pick it up in the net, and it just precipitates through.
Oh, is
White
it?
tissue paper?
Yes, along those lines.
Okay, yep. I think this might be a white water mold. And so basically what happens is, and again, this is something that it's a straight, it doesn't happen a lot.
No, the big thing is opening in the spring. Every spring, I fight with this to get it out.
Yep, yep. So that's just gonna be a huge shock, high chlorine.
It's a mold.
It's a mold, and typically, there's a product that we have actually purged, because it likes to grow in dark places. It probably is growing in your piping,
Or
and
over the
then we
winter.
see it, you see it, once it starts taking out. So, we actually have a product, and this is where, this is the only situations really I
Oh,
recommend
and
this.
hot tubs, talk about he's got one, but I mean, talk about when we change water in a hot tub, I can use purge.
Yep, yep, so it's just, basically purge, it just flushes your piping.
But you put it in beforehand.
Yep, for hot tubs. So if you have a hot tub, you have a spot purge, I recommend once a year, we should be doing it when you're doing the fill water. But the pool, white water mold, you're getting it built probably in your piping, because it likes to grow in dark places. You see it once it starts detaching. This, you just do 1 liter per skimmer, let it circulate around your pool, it will kind of flush out your piping.
So he's seeing this tissue paper type on the inside of the pipe come loose and being blown into the pool.
Into the
So that's
pool.
why
Yep.
the jellyfish scenario.
Correct. And then you're just gonna shock the heck out of it. So shocking, that's gonna be, let's add 2 cases of liquid, and basically you're probably gonna shock about 3 days in a row.
Oh,
So,
And open your
With-
cover or dome.
yes, with the tissue, with the white water mold, a lot of times people think they got rid of it, but there's still just a little bit left and it starts just growing back again. You need to make sure, so I always say, when you think it's gone, that means shock 1 more day.
At what temperature?
When it get, just,
Cause they're opening my pool next week, and I
Okay.
am gonna have the problem.
Well, wait a second, he's also got a dome so it's warm,
okay, yeah.
so I mean, but.
My pool by this time will be 95 degrees next week.
Yeah, you're good to go. Then that's, yeah, I'll go
We
through.
swing from Easter to Thanksgiving.
So, how does he use purge in the pool?
Yep, so you only use 1 liter, so that's if it's 1 per skimmer.
One.
Yep, 1. So you can dump it in that whole bottle and just let it circulate for 24, 48 hours.
Are you saying that it's only on the suction lines? Because the return lines, do you have a chlorinator on your pool?
No, it's the same.
They use sustain. I put the tablets in the filter.
Yep.
So how does the mold grow on the suction line, on the skimmer line, when you're bringing in chlorine with it?
In all of the water pipes.
This only,
Any of the piping lines.
this occurs in the spring, so it's like October, they Thanksgiving, they shut down our pool. We put the cover over it, we have a dome over it,
Yep,
and then in spring, when they open it up, and then after I think it's clean, I go in the water and I scrub down all of the sides, because it adheres itself to the sides of the
yep,
pool.
yep.
And I just fight and fight and fight with it.
Yep, and so it's constantly growing, and so that's what we need to shock it, and then shock it, and then shock it again. So that's where, like, I say 3 days in a row, and if you just go home and add 2 cases of liquid,
No, it says that.
let it kill it, but then again, add another case tomorrow, and then a third, when you think it's gone, that means shock 1 more day. And that's why, because we used to make sure, I think what's happening is that we're adding chlorine, you might give it away, but it's
Closed, you don't have.
continually build it back up again, and then you see it, so it's just, that's what happens to a lot of people, they shock it, and then it's gone, but it's still growing, and then it just slowly comes back, because they never get rid of it, you just, and so, pink slime and whitewater mold, they're both just different forms of that, and that's really just it. So I think it's just elevated chlorine, probably about 3 days in a row, I'd say is safe, but it's gonna be, when you think it's gone, that's when I say 1 more day of shock, basically. So I think that will do it. Just be great.
Is there anything that you can use to prevent it from coming back?
That's just gonna be, make sure that your chlorine is, what kind of happens is your chlorine probably drop, and that's how it did.
Are you asking coming back in the season, or are you asking that he should prevent it in fall when he closes?
Right.
That's what you're.
Either or, I mean.
Well, okay, so that's a good question, when we close the
If
pool.
he's not shocking it enough, it is slowly growing back again, and so when he opens in spring, it has
So do I,
so he shocks it before he
do
closes.
I pour,
Wait a second, guys, keep in mind that, and I could be wrong, but is Jerry the only customer we have with those white mold? If you're swimming in October and whatnot, you've got very hot water that we're turning the pump off and letting it sit for a few weeks before it gets cold. You're under the cover,
no, I'll back you up, because we'll swim the day before you come in. So our pool, when you come to shut down our pool is 95 degrees.
that's what I'm saying.
that might be the problem.
But Jerry, what I'm saying is you're shutting it down at 90 degrees, and you got a cover on it, you got a dome on it, and now it starts growing for weeks until you get into November or December.
When it freezes.
Well, we are closing your pool in November, and so until it gets cold in December, you're growing this, and then it's laying in the pipe over the 3-4 months, and then we're firing up tomorrow and blowing it right back in the
And
pool.
that's why, I think we just haven't completely gotten rid of it. What's probably happening is each year we're shocking it, it starts to go away, but it just starts to grow back up. We never got rid of it completely.
So that jug, Krog,
Yep, purge.
Purge.
do I dump that in when we shut down the pool?
Nice, I'm gonna look into
No,
that.
I would like, go home, you could go home this season what this does is just flushes whatever's in your piping, it'll flush it out into the pool, so your chlorine can get it. What happens with the whitewater mold, if it's growing in your piping, which it usually does, likes to grow in dark, the chlorine just singes it as it passes through your piping. If we can flush it out into the pool, now chlorine can attack it from all sides and actually kill it and get rid of it, So it's just one of those things where you're probably elevate your chlorine, it's gonna singe that white water mold and lower it, but it just doesn't complete the job. If we can get it out into the open of your pool, now it can get attacked by all sides from the chlorine, actually kill it and get rid of it.
Cause like I said, I tried taking the net and tried to fish it out.
Yep, and that's what I mean, it's just constantly, you just keep going back, you know, so, that's what, it's just gonna be elevated chlorine, like I said, once you think it's gone completely, that means one more day of elevated chlorine. It just,
And what, 10 parts?
yep, 10 parts, so that's shocking, it's basically 3 days in a row, but maybe it's 4, no, probably 3 days in a row to shock. So.
And to shock, what temperature you shocking at?
Oh, well, your pool's warm, right, so it's just, you don't, you know, it's just,
Not right now, it's not.
oh, it's
No,
not,
I haven't turned the heater on yet.
Well, we-
okay. Well, then I'll wait till it warms up, you know, just normal.
70?
But put the purge in, so.
Yeah, you can put the purge in, let the purge work for a day or
3 or
two.
4 days of solid 10 parts per million of chlorine in the pool.
When you think it's crystal clear and the white things are gone, that just means one more day of shocking. Because more than likely, it's not completely gone, there's just a little bit floating around, so you just can't see it. So that's why when you think it's gone, one more day, you should. So enzymes, so I want to talk about this is a lot of organic load going on in this pool, you know? So ours like to use, to break it down, as anyone take baths or have kids and have to take, you know, this sort of, do you ever see what the dirty water, you know? If I took a bath and soaked in the bath now, does anyone want to use my bathtub water? If I said, hey, it's still hot, go ahead, jump in, take your bath,
No.
right? You can't picture some dirty water, but I put some lotion on my hands this morning, dead skin cells come off, you know, it's a lot of gunk that just, hair product, makeup, whatever, you know, that comes off of that. Especially in a pool, we're talking about suntan lotion's gonna be the main culprit, so, but this goes back to swimmer waste, all that organic stuff is what chlorine gets tied up with. Some stuff chlorine can get and get rid of and kills it, other stuff gets combined with, and that's the lotions and oils. So we talk about enzyme technology, this is what was great for breaking down this stuff. There is definitely no chlorine left in this spot, no chlorine, I can guarantee you that. It's all used up and gone hours ago. I would not want to go in there.
I would
you
even
know.
put my big toe in.
But this is what, you know, so in a pool too, it's just, there's a lot of organic waste. In spas is more, it's hot water, we're sweating, it adds up. But even in pools, just, we're cleaner when we leave out there. You know, people are, I think 83, there was a study, 83% of people admitted to peeing in the pool. If you watch your friends and notice they're just having a cocktail or a beverage and they never leave the pool, they're probably, you know, all that stuff builds up though, this is something that's, you know, if 83% of people admit to that, it might be even higher in instances of things. But all this stuff adds into the organic content. So when I talk about organics, what are we talking about? Suntan lotions are going to be the biggest. So any type of oil, all that stuff, that is what chlorine gets combined with and can't get rid of. So when we talk about that combined stuff, that's what it is. If we can get rid of this organic stuff, now chlorine doesn't get used up on it or get combined with it. So that's why we really like enzymes in pools, because enzymes, we have enzymes in our stomach, we eat food, enzymes start breaking down that food in our stomach, nutrients get sent to the body. It works the same in a pool. Enzymes float around, they attach to this organic lotion particle, break it down, enzymes break down those particles until it's air and water. So it doesn't go in the filter, acts as a filter cleaner basically, you get longer filter runs, but it just keeps breaking it down until it's air and water and it goes away. So that's just kind of why people really like the enzymes. It's a natural way to break down stuff and they're good at breaking down emulsions and oils. I had a customer, this was a couple of years ago, but had Lay's chips. They were having a pool party, just opened up a bag of Lay's, starting to throw the football around the pool. Oops, dropped the bag. They just saw the oil just, you know, go throughout the pool. You know, just a bag of Lay's and think how much oil's on those, greases on those, like, you know. They end up dumping it in this pool perfect with enzymes and it just got rid of it. But they literally saw the oil go all through the pool, you know. And that's what we're doing. So with the enzyme products, usually 2 caps a week. These are all very similar. This is straight enzymes. These are newer products, the enzymes mixed with the phosphate removal.
So take the phosphates out, they grow algae, so this is a
Yep.
combination of the two.
Yep, and then this is just a bigger bottle, the same thing with a little bit of clarifier. So We just, add it on, it's kind of like the basic car versus all the bells and whistles, but 2 caps a week, you're dumping in thousands of enzymes, and they're just floating around down all those particles. So if your pool's being used, enzymes are great, people love them. If you're not, and hopefully all you guys are using that pools, but if you're not using your pool that much, if you don't have that much load, organic load, you don't necessarily need the enzymes. But they're great for, anytime I hear families, kids, I have mine, the pool house, all my neighbors are using the pool, I have a dog, and one dog's equivalent to about 20 people. So it doesn't, think of all what gets on their fur, they jump in there, it's just a thing, so. But it's just great, it's just the whole, the main goal is that we're trying to keep that chlorine molecule free. So if you take away the organic stuff, now that chlorine molecule can't get combined, can't get used up on it. And if you can keep 1 to 3 parts chlorine, I can tell you right now, you're not gonna have problems in the pool. That's just the main goal of what we're kind of just kind of going through. But here's what enzymes are kind of doing. The scum, lots of people get the water line ring, ring around the collar, they kind of say. Cloudy water. What happens, so the filter, what I was talking about earlier, that cartridge filter, it takes out 18 to 20 microns. That's what it filters out to. Microns are a unit of measurement. Any particle smaller than 18 microns is going to go through the cartridge filter. If your pool goes a little hazy, a little cloudy, that just means we have too many particles and it just gets a little bit cloudy.
Dust, you're fine.
Yep, this is too small. So, enzymes, if we can, on a weekly basis, instead of getting it, break down, let the enzymes will break down those particles.
It'll eat it up.
Yep, just eats it up and goes away. So that's kind of just one of the things. But I will say too, going back to the cloudy pools, your first line of defense if you do go cloudy is going to be a clarifier. Every pool owner basically has one of these. Hopefully you're not going through this whole bottle a year, but every pool owner has a clarifier sitting around. What happens is that if your pool does get visually a little bit cloudy or hazy, as I refer to it, again, we know it's just too many particles in the water. You add a squirt, 3-4 ounces of a clarifier.
But that's only that much in the bottle.
Yep.
So
Just
don't get happy on that bottle.
But you add it, and what that does is it takes out 1 particle, it combines it with 5 other particles. Now it's 6 particles big, so when it does hit the filter, now it's big enough that it gets taken out. So that's everyone's first line of defense. If you're a pool owner, everyone just has, hey, my pool's just look a little bit off. This is gonna be the first line of defense. Basically, just squeeze it, let your pump run, 24 hours later, it should clear up a little bit.
How are these chemicals stored? Can we keep these in our garage, or do they need to be indoors, temperature-wise, or?
Yeah, pretty much everything you just don't want, nothing to freeze.
Okay.
Yep, everything else you should be good. Sun, as far as these chemicals, sun doesn't, doesn't affect it.
Okay.
As far as your chlorine, I will say we don't want moisture to get in that bucket. Any of those buckets of the tablets, you don't want, so it's important to stay that, keep out the sunlight,
And don't you keep your acid separate from your chlorine?
Correct. You never want to keep those like right next. That's a bad mixture. So yes, keep.
Good to know.
If you want to do the muriatic acid, keep that completely untouched and separated.
So could I put them in their own designated deck box?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Like,
it would be good to keep the acid not in the same one, because chlorine, any form of chlorine or bleach and muriatic acid makes mustard gas, which the Germans use in World War I, and it'll kill you.
okay,
Your lungs, so don't.
so you get a good dose of it when you open up your deck box. Yeah,
But along that line for, cleaning around your pool, and you was kinda talking before about the enzymes, you can use Pool Perfect on a green, sponge to clean around the top of your pool, that does really well.
Or you can always raise the water line and then add a double dose of that and just give it 24 hours.
Yeah, I could do that.
But yeah, the sponge is the easiest to go through. I did just want to touch real quick about iron staining, copper staining, and scaling. So basically, anytime we have metal molecules or calcium molecules, if they're in solution, that's great. We don't see them, we don't notice them. When they come out of solution, that's when we can actually get staining. Does anyone have well water in here? Okay. A lot more, that's gonna be usually higher metal content out of your fill water. So that's gonna be, if we do get staining or discolored water, We do have a granular product, it just takes away and it plops the staining right back into solution, takes the metals into it. But what's gonna be even more important is gonna be the metal-free, and that's just, it's a stainless steel product, it coats the molecule and it prevents it from coming off solution. So if it's coated, it's kind of, think of like a Star Wars force field. If it's protected, you know, we're safe, it doesn't come up. It's when it's not protected, it can come off solution. And that gets back into your pH, right? So if our pH gets out of whack in those bad zones, it makes it easier for metals to come off solution. Or, well, sounds like it's a stain for calcium to come off solution. So scaling is just high calcium. If it comes out of solution, it's gonna be a rough white, and it just is gonna feel rough to the touch. But that's another, same thing, you can use metal-free, or we call scale-free, the same product. It just coats that calcium if you have high calcium, prevents it coming off solution. So, then you just wanna go through this couple of options, stain removal, talked about that, prevention. Got through the clarifier already, and then the enzymes we talked about too. So this is a weekly dose.
So, we have quite a bit of iron in our water, and I think our hose lines are all filtered.
Yep.
No, usually not. The hoses are not run through your filter because you're just using the grass. So, no, they are.
They are,
Well,
because we've had so many orange things.
maybe I remember you guys talking, okay, that's unusual. The thing that I would question is a iron curtain or a softener is only gonna run so many gallons, 600-800 gallons, before it needs to regenerate.
Yep,
So,
okay, yeah.
so if you're watering your grass or washing your car or whatnot, at some point that is only gonna go so long. If you're doing laundry in the same day, you're gonna end up with orange laundry because you've used up all your softened water. So I'm not sure that I would agree with you that those faucets on the outside of the house are softened, because if you're letting it run all day, you could run a couple thousand gallons of water out there.
We have an irrigation system that's hooked up.
And that's
Correct.
all
Part of
softened
our,
water?
no,
Oh.
anything near the driveway is filtered.
Okay, so
So-
your garden hose is, but your irrigation, your sprinkler system is not.
Portions of our sprinkler system is not. Otherwise, we would have had to have gone to a commercial filter.
Interesting.
Well, and that's good, if they're
So-
filtering, that's.
But that's a good point. I'll have to watch how many gallons I'm putting in, if I really think I'm putting in filtered water or not. But is there something, my question was, is there a product that's specifically for the iron in the water? for
To
this area?
filter it out, there's, and you can attach this to your the hose.
Yep,
Okay,
and this will do like 40,000 gallons, this will fill your pool 2.5 times.
Yeah,
okay.
You know,
and that's what I would recommend, especially if you're in the well.
approximately?
$70.
Yeah.
It's not a lot.
And then you're still gonna get some metals in there, but it's gonna take out a huge chunk. So if you know that you're high metal content, I would recommend that. Because
Definitely, and we
the
should
thing
be.
is, you know, we can only put so much products to help you get super high, just need so much product.
This
It's
you
tough to
probably
manage.
have on your
So-
back porch, especially in your case, but it probably wouldn't hurt anybody else that has a well to have this in the back porch, screw down a hose, and just lay it there and fill your pool.
Yeah.
You know, and that's probably a good idea.
Okay.
So, and if we do the opening kit, so this is what we recommend for openings. And that has a metal-free bottle in there, so you get one bottle of that, because that's what we encourage. And then there's also a bottle of enzymes and a phosphate remover, and there's a second bottle, but dump that in, let it go for 24, 48 hours, and then add chlorine to it, is basically is what we kind of recommend. And if Rob flips it around, we recommend the
Wait
same.
for next screen.
Oh,
We've done this twice now, okay? Oh, one more screen.
we recommend the same thing for closings, actually. So this is what we recommend.
That says marketing.
That's how marketing.
Wait, let me back up.
That's a brilliant marketing. But it's the same thing we recommend for closings on the side. So you get in there a stain and scale. Again, we don't want those metal particles to stain through the off-season space. So what we're doing, enzymes to break down the organic load and the things. So that's basically
Is that what your guys use when they come out of that kit?
Yep, that's what they're kind of dumping in. I think what Rob's dumping in, if he's opening the pool, he's dumping in the hassle-free kit, you just out the side. So you get the, and then right over. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So that's what they're doing in the I would say give it 2 days to circulate, and then
Thank you.
chlorine, you should be good to go. That's gonna be the opening closings. On that. And then Rob has a couple.
Oh, yeah. When you guys open, your pump basket and you clean out your leaves, small little detail, this needs to face forward. So, some people have managed to turn it in sideways and jab it in there, and 2 leaves will get up against the basket and plug it. So, just make a point of have this facing forward, so your leaves can go in there. What Matt was talking before about was the chlorine is stupid and it's gonna attack anything. You don't want the chlorine to be going after a pump basket or a skimmer basket full of leaves. Use your, get your leaves out of there so your chlorine can be effective on something else.
I got them.
Have a good weekend.
Yeah, just clean your pool. Most of you all have a automatic cleaner. Throw that in, let it wander around, but again, take that out and clean the basket and clean the leaves. What are you thinking, Leah? Sorry, I thought she was gonna say something. So get the dirt out of your pool, and this will circulate your water. It actually helps filter the water, and it picks up the dirt. So it's a great asset in the pool.
That's pretty much the end of it.
So, what would you like to know? What did we go too quick on or skip over?
How much is your starter kit?
I wanna say it's like somewhere around like $60.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, worth it.
And
So
then
if you
the
guys
outside.
open my pool, I don't have to worry about the starter kit?
That's
or
right.
I have to have it on
Are we
hand?
using this or are we using algicide and to open
Those are the 2 things that are included in our opening.
algicide and this?
And the 90 day,
Okay.
so if they're
So if
opening.
we're opening
And
it, that's
closing.
part of it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you should just add, algae break 90 in the 4th of July. Because what Matt was saying before is, you'll get 90 days on it, so we open the pool in April, May, June. So around the 4th of July, dump a quart of that in, and then when we close your pool, we'll add another quart along with the closing kit.
But sorry.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Mine is just a dumb question, so go ahead.
No.
There's no dumb questions in this room.
You haven't heard mine. Then we're responsible for the other, what was the other 1 or 2 things that we do once a year? The sunscreen for the,
The cyanuric
Well,
acid,
that when you get your water
you wanna get
up
tested.
and going and running, bring a
Okay.
sample in here and Leo will set you up on that.
okay,
So, and you might wanna come here every 2 to 4 weeks, maybe as you guys, some of your, our new pool owners, come every 2 weeks, okay? Maybe then you'll get down to 4 weeks or so, and 4 weeks is fine, just check it and see how it's doing. Definitely don't come here every week, unless you have a problem. No, we have some great customers that come every week, and I'm like,
Every
you have a
week.
problem with your pool? And they're like, no.
Just making sure.
Okay, yeah, that's fine, but you don't have to, but once I believe you were talking about cyanuric acid, which is,
Yeah.
so this is gonna be a single ad till we get you to the 30 to 50 parts per million. And we put that in there, we're not gonna have to add hardness in your water, that's gonna be in range. And then you probably should be adding either Max or Pool Perfect and Phosphate and doing 2 caps a week, because this is gonna have everything you was talking about, the metal controls and the phosphate remover, and the Pool Perfect.
The enzymes, yep.
Yep, and the enzymes in there, and the enzymes make sense, they just eat all the gunk, so I mean, that's
all
just.
that.
Pool Perfect Max is usually what I
Yeah.
recommend.
What do you
This is like the best, the top line.
Yep.
It's the pool, it's enzymes plus the clarifier, plus a little bit of phosphorus. This one's straight enzymes, so this is like, you want
Okay.
all, and I like this because the 3-liter bottle gets it through pretty much 1 season, if you can get the bigger bottle.
Unless you're having a lot of parties, because
Right.
I'm gonna tell you to add an extra.
Yeah, if you have the parties, it's always nice to add in the enzymes before the pool.
You keep in mind what Matt's talking about is the enzymes are gonna eat all the little particles, so we don't have to, combine them together, get them in the filter, we don't have to burn them out with chlorine. It's just, the more you get the junk out of the pool, the more the chlorine's wandering around looking for something to grab onto. And then you're gonna use less chlorine.
That was my question, I think, on that floaty thing that you put the tablets in.
Yep.
I mean, you control.
This is called a floater. Not a floating thing, but that's fine.
But we can put as many tablets in there, but we control it by,
Yeah, the opening on the bottom.
so it doesn't matter what the size of the pool. That will go with any
Yeah,
size
right.
pool?
Right, you
Okay,
got a small pool, you just dial it down.
okay.
When you're testing it,
Highly recommend with those, especially with above ground pools, or even liner pools that don't have, or they use that. anchor it to like your ladder
Okay,
instead of letting it float around the pool, because where it's gonna go is right to your skimmer.
okay, good to know.
Because that's
good
where
to know.
the most suction is, and it's gonna go sit there, and now you've got the highest amount of chlorine going right into your equipment. So if you tie
Maybe
it,
your pump and maybe your
if you
heater.
tie it over by like your ladder where your return is, where the water's coming back into the pool, that's also gonna help with the erosion of the tablets. And get it more dispersed throughout the pool instead of it going through the equipment, then into the pool.
Okay, cause we're gonna have I mean, obviously ours has a liner and whatnot, so I don't really need to be concerned with too much with the liner. I mean, it just, a pool's a pool, kinda with chemicals and.
Well, you don't wanna drop tablets on the Florida liner, it'll turn white down there.
Yeah.
You don't wanna throw tablets in there, that's why you have the floater.
The floaty
Floaty
thing.
thing.
Thank you.
Let's technical
Let's get it
terms.
right, the floaty thing. Okay, great, thank you.
No, I mean, you guys are, you know, you're asking good questions, there are no dumb questions when you're new pool owners, you just, you know.
Yeah,
you
and
don't
above
know.
ground pools, like if you're using the floater, you're not gonna add
You almost said
conditioner.
it. Almost said floaty thing.
I almost did. You're not gonna add conditioner, cause the tablets that you're putting in there have it in it. So yours is going
She's
to
gonna
rise
need a little
up,
something to get up
No.
to,
because then they go over by too much.
do you take your pool down every year?
This is our first year, we don't even have it up
Is it a
yet.
soft-sided portable pool?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I wouldn't add it, because they're gonna burn through so many tablets, and their cyanuric acid is gonna end up being closer to 80, 90, 100 by the time the season's over. The more tablets you burn through, the more cyanuric acid and stabilizer you're adding to the pool.
she's talking about trifluent tablets, not
And I've
sustained
seen this
tablets.
way too much,
that's
so
what I was
I
gonna say.
don't wanna take that.
Sustained does not.
I'm like, wait a minute, this goes against what I just learned.
The regular trifluor dichlor tablets go in that floater, not.
No, we're above ground,
Sustained.
so you're not. we're
Well, it
not
doesn't matter,
above
you
ground.
could be an in-ground, it's just
Oh,
how you
okay.
sanitize your pool. The older pools would have the same tablets, so, you know, this is just, like I said in the beginning, this is a little newer technology.
Okay.
You know, you can buy a fiberglass pool and not have anything on it and put a floaty thing in it if you want.
A floaty,
You know, it doesn't matter. The thing is that, you know, when the people will add the UV and the ozone and the chlorine generator, and it's just a little more of an automated, more of a mini professional type pool.
Okay.
I understand this is gonna be a really broad question, but, so when we had the pool installed in October, I found that the Sustain tablets dissolved fairly quickly. Can I assume that once it's, because dissolved, and I realize I will test every week, but that I need to put another tablet in to maintain my chlorine? Do you know?
So if you're burning through them too fast because you have a cup,
Yep,
you set that flap
yep,
to halfway,
okay.
so that way you're not burning through them too fast.
What's a typical, like,
In the hot summer part, like July and August, you're probably gonna go through double. And even though it says 1 tablet per 10,000 gallons of water, which in a 15, that's 1.5 tablets a week. Yeah, no,
okay,
bump that up. It's gonna be 3 a week, and then in the hot
And-
summer,
and-
it could be 6 a week.
And it depends on, like
many
Nancy
kids
said,
are in
how many
it.
kids and how many
Yeah.
neighbors,
many
and you guys
dogs.
are all new
my dog,
pools.
my dog
You
is
know.
swimming it more than anyone.
Well, so you're gonna go for a
So
walk.
that's why you go to the
That's
There you go.
That's what people always say, like, it's.
I only got
like,
one
Florida-
kid.
Yeah,
One kid and.
One dog.
Yeah, one dog, 20 kids
Well,
over here.
I always feel like, I don't get it, in the hot summers I burn through so much chlorine. It's not just because of the heat, it's we're using the pool
Yes,
more. If we go through a string of
Yeah, more
87
kids,
to
you
93,
got more
I'm jumping in
hair
there every
lotion
single
and
day.
sun
Well,
lotion.
that's a lot of organic
Yeah.
junk that chlorine has to burn, you know, so.
Right.
That's where we're talking about the add-ons of what to do.
I was just trying to
Yeah.
figure out, like, what should I expect,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
Every pool's slightly different from how much usage it is, and you're gonna have some that burn through faster.
And, you know, the opposite is true too. Cloudy, cooler, rainy day, and then you're not swimming in it.
Yeah.
Well, then your chlorine level's gonna be high, cause that tablet's
but
gonna
my
be this.
dog will.
The dogs in the
Yes.
And for those that have the ozone and the UV, you don't have to have 3 parts per million like they do. You can drop yours down to 1 part per million for each.
Cause the
And that's
ozone
why-
is gonna.
Because the ozone is doing it for you,
Yes.
so you drop your chlorine
What are the
usage.
3 things?
So that's what I'm-
Circulation, filtration,
And chemicals.
Yeah,
Yeah,
chemicals.
so it's always a third, but that's why I said for Rob's pools, you pretty much ozone UV and enzymes on weekly. you're not gonna
Yeah.
have very few varmints. So that's a lot of help that we're giving chlorine.
Keep in mind that the water coming out of our UV and our ozone is basically sterile. Now you guys understand, and I realize some of you don't have your pool in yet or whatnot. We're not talking about filtration, and we're not talking about sanitation, but when it comes through the UV and the ozone, it's sterile. I guess that's the best, is that the best word? You know, it's not sanitized, there's no chlorine in it, it's just like boiled water, it's just sterile. And it's not, we're not talking filter, you know, but I mean, we're just bringing pure water in. Well, now we do have all the organics in there, so you need less chlorine.
So if you have this ozone and the UV and everything else, do you still have the floater?
Well, you need chlorine.
You need chlorine no matter
You need a
what.
tablet floater or a chlorine
If
generator.
Yeah,
Or
we
a
have
tablet.
the generator.
Yep,
So you need,
good.
So
you
you
need
really
one of
don't need a
these three
floater.
here.
No, you do not need a floater.
Okay,
You
so we
are-
have a thing on the right, so we
That's
don't
right.
have any of
You're
that.
generating chlorine, you're making chlorine out of salt, okay?
I don't have that.
No, but you're adding a tablet, you don't have a floater, but you have you're putting a sustained tablet in your skimmer.
Correct.
Or you can put a trichlor tablet in here, so you're adding chlorine in one of the ways. I guess the fourth one would be that she's putting tablets in the skimmer. But you have to add a little bit of chlorine somewhere. Manufacture it, floater or skimmer or tablet feeder, those are the 3-4 ways to add.
But the water chemistry is gonna be the same regardless how you get your chlorine. So,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
pH, alkalinity, CY, all that stuff's gonna be the same. This is, are we a salt generator that's producing chlorine?
Chlorine
Or are we
generator, salt
sustaining-
generators, I call it chlorine generator, because the salt generator is really, a salt, it comes from the mine, that's technical.
Yep, so you